Welcome to Crazy Shit in Real Estate, a weekly podcast where I walk you through some of the wildest, most unbelievable stories you'll hear from the world of real estate. If you like real estate and you love crazy, this is the podcast for you.
Hello, friends. Leigh Brown here, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, as you're getting familiar, you're going to get dialed right into the middle of a conversation, which is frankly how life is supposed to go anyway. Today's conversation is with Cantey. She is a former corporate guru with the real estate side of her personality, now mixed in with some leadership coaching, tons of parallels and overlays, and a pretty funny little side note about a doorknob. I hope you'll enjoy it. I really enjoyed meeting her and look forward to your feedback. So thank you for being willing to come on the show here. I'm so excited to have you as a guest. And I love your backdrop, by the way. That's such really good art back there. Are those local artists?
It's mine and my son's. And then I got my CWP. And so I downsized it and made 100% on my test. So I decided to stick it up there too.
So I should probably, have you seen what's on my office door?
Love it.
Right? You know, you got to have some artwork around.
Yes.
And people say, well, why don't you get really creepy people in your DMs? I say, because they've looked around my background. They know.
Real estate attracts all kinds.
It does. So tell me how long you've been in and around real estate, what you've done, and a little bit of background on Catherine.
So real estate's been kind of like my side hustle. That's what has allowed me to go work in corporate America for 20 years and do the day-to-day and travel 60% of the time, which was great. And yeah, so then I also just went out on my own. It's been about a year and a half, left corporate America. It was a wonderful experience, but I just needed more. And this is my way to give back through leadership coaching. And all of my clients have received 100% measured results. So I'm super excited for them and what they've been able to accomplish. But while I've been on the road, part of my thing was I never wanted to live in a forever house. And we've been married for 20 years. I think 21, 22, something like that. And so part of my deal with being married is I don't want to live in a forever house. So we just keep buying houses. And then we bought one, and then every time we buy one, you know, it's a dump or it just doesn't look good or something. And then my husband doesn't pay attention to the details. He walks through the house and he's like, oh, it didn't look like this before. I'm like, it always looked like that. So it started with a gallon of paint, and then he's like, oh my God, the carpets are terrible. I'm like, well, that's what we bought. That's what's in our budget. So that was like our first. There are a lot of stories within just that one with the doorknob, and we didn't almost close because he wanted a doorknob fixed at the last minute and he was going to walk away from the table.
Oh, wait a minute. Your husband's that guy?
Oh, he's that guy. It's bad. Like I know you're a real estate agent, so you probably don't even like me at this comment, but with all my stories, but he had an agent come in, and we've just done for sale by owner for everything. And an agent came in and said she needed, X percent. And he's like, you take as much as you want. Yeah. And she was like, well, I would like 10%. And he's like, that's awesome. The person that you have here to buy the house will be happy to pay for it. And I'm like, oh my God, William. So yeah, I'm married to that guy. So I just it's a closing. I know it's a closing with us because we don't sit in the same room with the person who's purchasing the house or selling the house. So then we moved to Mayberry, our little town, Camden, South Carolina. You may have been to the horse races. And I just call it Mayberry because this place cracks me up. And I agreed to move here if I could fix up a house. And if it wasn't going to be like, a good place to live, like I don't want to be here anymore, he agreed that we could move out or not stay in Camden. So we bought a house and I lowballed it. And I was like, there's no way that these people are going to take this offer, but it's cute and it's the holidays. It's got potential. You put me in a cardboard box and I don't think it has potential. And so they take the offer. I'm like, well, damn, now we're moving to Mayberry. So here we go. And we start doing all this stuff ourselves. And it's a lot to take on. It was only 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. We turned it into 1.5 baths, but it was just nothing but mold and old plaster walls and the kitchen that just need to be resurfaced. But I couldn't find a cabinet guy guy who would just go with it and trust me that this is going to be okay. So I started tiling the floors and doing all this work. And so we ended up in that house, and then it ended up being too small. So then we bought a mill house and totally took it down to the studs and that exterior walls and added 1,000 square feet on the back and rebuilt it and lived in there for a few years. Some of my favorite stories are when he told me he only wants to live on one of 3 streets in our little Mayberry town. And those houses are more like the 3, 4, 5, 600 to a million range. And he said, I only want to spend, 150 max. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do that. But I was 6 months pregnant, and I said, the dog and the baby and I are going to live closer into town, because at the time we were living at the lake. I said, we're going to move into town. He said, well, I'm not going to live anywhere except for on those 3 streets. So I started doing research, and I start putting feelers out there. And a lady said, well, you could probably call this woman. I think she wants to sell her house. It's rented out right now. I was like, cool. So I call her, 6 months pregnant. And I said, can I take a look at your house? And it's not for sale. She's like, yeah, you can look at it. So I did the walkthrough. I pulled my own comps. I meet her at a McDonald's. I said, this is what, I'm willing to do. I got my whole proposal laid out on the table. And she's like, yeah, that's just not going to work. I was like, that's fine. If you change your mind, that works too. So she comes back and we split the difference. Like, I don't even know. I started at like 140. She came back at 200, and then we came to 160, and I still said 140. And she said, how about 150? And I was like, well, I guess. So we split the difference all the way down. And so now I'm 6 months pregnant. We have this house, and he walks through this and he's like, oh my God, there's no kitchen. There's no closets. I can't live in this. So we completely gut this historic home in downtown. So you have to work with historic people and try to get their approval. And none of those people are historians. They just self-qualified themselves.
They're busybodies is the better way to put the historic district volunteers. And if you're listening to this and you're a historic district volunteer, you kind of know that's who's on the committee. We know this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's a challenge. And so we,
that part of Camden though, that's like an amazing part.
It's beautiful. I love it. And they've done this beautiful beautification process. I know I double used the words, but it's really.
Have you run the Revolutionary Half? It's like my favorite race. I drive to Camden, well, except for stupid COVID, but I love that race because it goes by all the revolutionary sites. We run through that part. I bet I run by your house, or what that house that you're talking about.
Well, yeah. So we ended up renovating this. I just totally went on a tangent of all my random real estate.
But it's kind of fun. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. And I just noticed you hit record and was like, just totally going at it. So anyway,
episodes, by the way, that have a random backstory.
You got a random backstory now.
In Camden.
Yeah, in Camden. So we go through this house and he doesn't want to live in it. And so we just start tearing down the walls and figuring out what we can save and what we can't save, and reconfigure the floor structure and put it back in. And then we move in 2 weeks before my due date. And then I was, I think, 10 days late. So it was not a big deal. So I was kind of, twiddling my thumbs at that point. And so we grew out of that one and decided we wanted to have a new house in downtown Camden, and ended up buying the neighbor's house that nobody had been living in. I stayed in touch with them for a few years and said, if anything ever comes up, let me know. And she sent me a note and said, I think I'm ready to sell. So she sold it, and it had been abandoned for probably 10 plus years. And we ended up tearing it down and built a new house in historic Camden. So
when you just do them in a big way.
It's pretty large, yeah. Well, I mean, it seems normal to us, but I guess that may not be normal to some.
The fact that your marriage can survive not just one renovation, but multiple build projects is a testament to your relationship. Because
now we're working on a commercial renovation, and that's going to test another probably level of the relationship. So we'll see how that goes. And I have to laugh.
Permits,
fire safety. Yeah, I met with them last week.
That's the worst. The sprinkler people are so negative. Sprinkler people, y'all got to positive up a little bit. They're hard to deal with.
I like my fire guy. He seems super nice. He trained me on how to read a fire extinguisher. I didn't know there was a process, but there is.
Oh, that's good information to have.
It is. It is. And yeah, so then I'm on a hospital board, and we're renovating a old plantation home on 65 acres, which is very exciting. But it's got good bones, so I think minimal change. But still, you have to go through a few processes to get approved to do certain things.
Is it going to be a bed and breakfast or an event venue?
It'll be an event venue, and then the assisted living is going to be on the campus, and then potentially some retirement homes around that.
Well, that would be nice if there was an event venue near assisted living. Why aren't there more places like that?
Well, you keep the youth around assisted living, and they say it should help, revitalize and we'll see. It's over within the golf course and, that whole area. So they've got different types of places. So if you've got different people and within a marriage that are at different phases, you can be in assisted living, still have your patio home, and still go play golf on the golf cart across the street. So it's a new idea.
How did you come to do this whole development plan with the different phases of aging?
That is something I came into the board. And so I'm on the hospital board, and they actually came to it as a 6-phased approach. And we're still getting approval from the city and the master plan and everything. But the property came for sale, and we needed somewhere to be able to locate the assisted living away from the existing hospital today. And to do that, we have this historic home, 65 acres. So the campus is there, it's available. And it, as a phased approach, you don't want to tear down this old antebellum home, and you want to be able to keep it. I mean, it's beautiful on the inside. There's a lot of rot on the outside, and maybe a few sprinklers might be needed on the inside. You know how that works. So small projects on the inside. And then as you look at the campus, over to the right will actually be the assisted living with, their full dining, et cetera. And it'll be a phased approach. So you have the main house for events. So if you want to be able to check in mom and dad at the assisted living, you can actually stay on site in one of the historic homes or bedrooms or suites, and then be able to go over there and make sure everybody got settled okay. And if you have a parent, or not a parent, but a spouse that's in the assisted living, but you're not ready to go there yet, there'll be some patio homes that'll be in a phased approach on the other side of the campus. So, and then a very large walking trail around the outside of it.
So it's a true multi-generational, and even not just multi-generational, but multi-phases of life setup. How did you play this in with your leadership life? So do you look at this as a way to put your leadership coaching into action and the work that you're doing through the hospital and this campus?
Yeah, so the leadership coaching is just something that I feel like we all live every day. And this is a way for me to give back out of being in corporate America. And if I can help other people figure out how to navigate within corporations, within organizations, it's a treat to be able to do that and be able to follow that process. So I don't just talk about it, but I feel like being on these boards and working within the community and working with different people, you actually have to show up and do what you say you're going to do. And this is a way to kind of execute and be able to have stories to share back when I'm working with coaching clients.
Well, you always get more stories to share and more analogies to start overlaying to help people get the visual that takes them next level. So I'm so curious, when you're doing your leadership coaching and you're helping people find their next pathway or expand their thinking or reshuffle how they're looking at their teams, how often does their real estate come into those conversations?
Real estate within shuffling in teams.
Mm-hmm. Because on the real estate side, every time we go to sell a house or help somebody purchase, their work life, their personal life come bleeding into real estate because everything seems to be hinging on what happens with the house. So what I'm curious about is in your world, which is leadership for people that are trying to go next level with their career, how often does real estate do the same thing and jump into the way that they think about their work?
I haven't seen it. Now I take that back. So I had a group of clients that I worked with for 6 months, and you really get to know these people when you're checking in and listening to them. And it was during the beginning of COVID, and home life was a big part of it. And whether or not their HVAC was working at the house, or if they needed to go meet a plumber, that was coming in. I've worked with people who built their own houses. And so you're listening to them do the trim work and the floorings and things like that, just in casual conversations before we get into the coaching. Or they may say, hey, wait a minute, I've got the plumber at the door. I need to step out of this coaching call real quick just to let them in so I can have a running, washing machine later today. So it trickles in. I had to think about that for a minute, but yeah, it trickles, but I bet it doesn't impact it like it does with you.
It's just so fascinating because real estate on the surface looks like, oh, it's a transaction. You buy a house and you live in it, no big deal. But it really is one of those transactions that it never stops with the contractors and the maintenance and this and that. And you live in it, and then COVID, work from home in it. And oh my gosh, these kids won't stop talking. I'm going to have to go sit in my car in the driveway office, and everything goes back around the house, including the whole Zoom setup. And how many of your clients have now moved into a Zoom environment where the way that the broadband hits the house affects the home office background that they have and the noise level from the kids homeschooling. So there's all these different weird overlays that we never expected in the business, even though 20 years ago, people still had real estate impact their business lives because of relocation and moving and the big chunks you tend to think about. But I was just curious because sometimes things are two-way streets and sometimes they're a one-way destination, and real estate seems to be that one-way catch-all that absorbs all the stress of all the different parts of life.
Oh, you're front and center when you think about it. Yeah, in the real estate area. And the car office that you kind of briefly talked about, that's very true for a lot of the clients, because if you're in a loud office or if you're trying to work from home, the best place to be is inside your car because you can lock the door and ignore the kids and the dog trying to get in there.
Did you see that whole thing on Twitter back at the beginning of the pandemic with all the hashtags of people having their conference call in the minivan and their eyes are basically this wide because they're like, I got nowhere else to go. I needed some quiet. They're all hiding in their minivans in the driveway. I was like, what in the interesting world we're in right now?
This is so true. So the commercial real estate that we're renovating right now, everybody's just got an open office space where they're working, which is fine. But then if you go out to the street, the street where the business faces, there's people just sitting in their cars and the cars are running and they're having phone calls, and they've just got to get some quiet to be able to have a conversation. So, yeah.
And I won't lie, when I was pregnant and had tiny people living in my house, they're, teenagers now, I would take naps in the car. There was no shame in that. Like, leave the office. You think I'm at lunch? Nope. In the car, taking a nap. So yeah, I think moms are early adopters of the car as a quiet space.
Nice little refuge. Nobody bothers you there. So I didn't know car seats can actually vibrate and do massages now.
What can? Like a kid's
No, a driver's seat.
Oh, my car does. I have a Ford Explorer, and it's like being at the nail salon. It's about as effective as a pedicure chair, but it feels good.
I would never get out.
Yeah, you would, but it keeps your back from hurting, your lower back.
Yeah.
So I don't have to sit on the old lady cushion anymore.
That's awesome.
Middle age is so much fun. All right. So I'm curious about your leadership program that you work in and how you transitioned from a corporate world to jumping out on your own, which actually is a really very, very classic overlay in real estate. The number of people who leave a disciplined job with expectations to go figure it out. And your go figure it out has really landed in that leadership space. What was your biggest concern when you left the corporate world to go off on your own?
Networking. I think just making sure I stayed in touch with my network in a proactive way. And when you're in corporate America, you have regularly scheduled meetings. And when you're on your own, you don't always have that regularly scheduled meeting unless you're doing that yourself. And making sure you stay in touch with your network and they know what you're working on, and just listen to hear what their struggles are. And if there's a way to help, be able to pay it forward and be able to help back the network that helped you get to where you are today. So that's been real important.
Well, and everybody in the world seems to call themselves a leadership coach. So how did you follow up with your network and stay relevant without seeming like you're just another person who's trying to be a life coach, leadership coach?
Yeah, it's that's a part that I guess that label, that's a hard label to have. And so, you just don't want to be called, oh, you're doing life coaching. I'm like, not exactly, but it's leadership coaching. And we have a process of stakeholder-centered coaching. It's been used by half of the Fortune 100 CEOs. This is probably the most effective way to get recognized by your peers to create change in your own career. So, that's hard. And then what I did when I left was I created some space. I didn't want them to think I was just going to come straight after, all the existing clients that we already worked with my, skills and programs that I had to offer. So I just created some space and just proactively stayed in touch with people just as I normally would, as if I was in corporate America. So just sharing newspaper articles, sharing podcasts, sharing anything that I thought could help solve their problem. And then also putting folks into a newsletter that I just run once a week, just to kind of share ideas and touch base with them. And from that, I've had people reach out to me, and then we just have discovery calls and conversations to see if it's a good fit. And, just trying to be authentic and stay who you are, and take care of your network the way they've taken care of you.
So funny. So you mentioned something that's very old school, and we act like all the old school stuff has gone away in an era of Zoom technology, but sharing articles and sharing a podcast that you listen to is just a way of taking the current information that's out there and even using technology to share it back across, because we're also overwhelmed. The noise is insane with the inundation of ideas and information, but they know your name. And so you get to cut through the noise because oh, that's Catherine. What did she send me now?
Mm-hmm.
And it's short and to the point and relevant. You did what we did 20 years ago, and it still works.
Yeah. It's not rocket science.
No.
I love some simplicity. I don't have time for much else. So, especially if I'm out buying houses that aren't for sale.
That's right. And then you got to gut it and worry about the doorknob. Although that's pretty hilarious that he was heated up about a doorknob.
I think he just did it for fun. It was pure entertainment.
Is he an engineer?
He's not an engineer. No.
What does he do for work?
He has a home improvement business.
So
but he doesn't fix anything around the house.
Somebody heated up about a doorknob would tend to be an accountant or an engineer or somebody who's like Mr. Spreadsheet.
Oh God, no.
Just Mr. Distracted by the wrong thing.
I think at the time he was in the grass business. He was growing turf. So, sod. So he's got a very interesting background, but yeah, I think at the time he was busy growing grass and didn't have time to fix the doorknob.
Okay. That's still so much though. I mean, any realtor who listens to my show will be like, oh yeah, I've had a client like that got heated up about a doorknob. Yeah, of course you did, because that's just the business that we're in. Okay. So if we look at what you have to offer to the world and the lessons you've learned in real estate and where it overlays with coaching, what would Catherine say is the biggest lesson in buying and selling houses taught you about leadership and the strategies of being that better person?
You really just have to listen to other people.
Come on, Catherine. It's that simple.
It's really good. Yeah. So if you just get quiet and actively listen and put down the phone and look at somebody eyeball to eyeball and just kind of see what their mannerisms are. Gosh, I sold a house to a guy one time and he just walked through it once and I just stayed quiet and just listened to what he had to say. And he paid full price for it and left me a $5,000 check for a deposit. And we just closed in 2 weeks. But I didn't say a darn word. I just let him do the talking and walk around. And then, of course, I follow back up with him to make sure we were going to close in 2 weeks. But really, leadership coaching is the same way. If you're really ready for it and you've got the courage and the humility and the discipline to show up for it, and you work with your stakeholders, your peers, your people around you, and listen to what they have to say. Choose what you are willing to change if you want to change, and follow back up with them.
Love that. You just totally distilled it right down. And there's something you didn't say, but I could hear it in the contextual clues. Do we talk ourselves past a lot of opportunities by not being quiet enough for somebody to make their own decisions?
Every
On
day.
the leadership side and the real estate side and the corporate side and the relationship side too?
Every day. Don't you think so?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I love realtors. They hate quiet. They hate a silence. But we all know that one of the basic tenets of negotiating is he who speaks first loses. But they can't stop. They're like, well, he's not talking. He must hate the house. So let's talk about that. And they start rambling. And the dude was just over here processing for a minute.
Oh my gosh, there's so many processors out there and analytical people, and we may not be those people. So we think there's something weird going on, and truly just be quiet and let them think about where they're going to put their lazy boy. That's all they need.
You know, the estimate, if you look at the DISC profiles, is that analytical portion of the general population is estimated to be 35% of the general public is processing at any given time. But realtors tend to be in those decisive D, that 5% of the world, and that I influencer, 25% of the world. So your bulk of your realtors are completely outnumbered by the processors. And what do? We don't give them data. We don't give them bullet points, and we chatterbox while they're over there. Give me a second, which is probably a good lesson for all of us.
I think it's excellent. And as a high D, I can totally relate. I just need to let other people process and let it sit for a minute, let it marinate.
Because we decided we're already done and moved on while they're over there processing.
Yes.
Patience is our need.
Yes. I need a lot of patience. I can make a decision. Let's do this paint color. Let's change out these appliances. Okay. Now we can go have lunch. I'm done. And everybody else is still over there. Now,
And
what
you
doorknob?
while you're super pregnant too.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. So I'd scared the people at Lowe's. Every time I went in there, they were just, trying to avoid eye contact with me anyway. And so now this pregnant woman's in there trying to get everything that she needs at the very end of her third trimester. And they're like, oh my God, here she comes. Oh my God. And she's pregnant.
I'm nesting. It's no big deal. I need stuff to my car, please.
I feel like I could work at Lowe's.
I'm pretty sure all of us could, although we probably shouldn't. What we can do is not always what we should do. Can we?
Yes. So true. So true.
Also, the lesson from real estate and leadership, that's a definite overlay there. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Very true.
So, Catherine, if anybody is looking to receive, because they're ready to receive information about leadership coaching, or they want to talk to you about what you offer to the world since you left the corporate space, how can they find you?
My website is catherinecantey.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn as Catherine Cantey.
And because y'all aren't sure how to spell Catherine or Cantey, don't worry about it, because if you'll look at the show notes for this episode, all of her links are there, so you can feel free to go connect and find out how you could take a little bit of leadership, coaching, and guidance and put it into action in whatever your professional life is. Because one of the craziest things about our real estate or our professional lives is that just a little bit of expansion thinking can change everything. So, Catherine, it's wonderful to meet you over the computer, and I look forward to seeing you in person. Maybe I'll reach out to you when I come back down to Camden to run the Revolutionary Run, provided it happens this year. All things being equal, South Carolina is ahead of the game. So
that would be so fun. I would love to see you, Leigh. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, make sure you go follow Catherine, go learn from her, reach out to her. In the meantime, subscribe to the podcast, give us 5 stars, and I'll see you next time.
If you are listening to this episode and you need to tell us something about your crazy life in or around real estate, then tweet me at Leigh Brown or reach me on any of the social networks. That's if you're a broker, realtor, investor, inspector, lender, or just a regular, normal human being who happens to have dealt in real estate. Subscribe for more episodes, and as always, we are thrilled that you joined us for some crazy shit in real estate. See you next time.